Welcome to Mosaic Days, where we talk about all things education, including student achievement and outcomes, professional development and training, and ADA versus enrollment. No alliteration today. I am your co-host, Leonard Martinez.
And I'm Allison Smith.
What is our agenda for today?
So today we are talking about potential changes in the state of California around how we go about funding our schools. We're currently using an average daily attendance model as part of that funding formula. And so we are going to be looking at potentially, or it's really a Senate bill that has asked the state to explore the difference between basing funding off of ADA or basing it off of actual enrollment of students.
Yeah.
I know that was complicated.
And it's super technical, and I read through the report and I had some difficulty understanding some of it. So we're going to try to break it down from our educator mindset. I always have a difficult time, and you know me well enough, when people outside of education start making decisions about education, and the LAO at times seems like they're so far removed, yet they're making this big recommendation. So this was SB 98. That was Portantino made a recommendation for the LAO to do a study on whether we could move from funding from an ADA model to an enrollment model. It seems to me, just superficially, let's do an enrollment. Let's do student enrollment. The amount of time and effort that goes into ADA calculations and efforts to bring students into class seems to me, the way it's set up right now, doesn't seem to be advantageous to most districts. And we take a look at how many districts. We oftentimes do an analysis on how many millions of dollars we're losing per year because of student absences.
Yeah. But one of the things, well, first of all, Portantino is from my area.
Is that a good thing?
I don't know if it's a good thing, because he does push a mark. So he is one that talked about and started the process of pushing start times back for older students and doing that whole thing. So
how's that working out for us?
I don't know. Saying that the high schoolers, right, needed a later start time because they needed more sleep, that whole thing, right? And but the one thing that I would say, and also in reading the report, it talks about, the positives. I feel like there are more negatives to this new model, only because
really?
I do feel that way, only because our school districts, while I feel like ADA has hurt our school districts at times, it also has incentivized them to get a little bit out there with the school communities. Get out there with their families, get out there to have attendance incentives. And so there was just the talk throughout the report about how there has been a positive change in our attendance rates around the state. The enrollment, the concern that they express is that schools are going to be so disconnected from the parents because there's not going to be any expectation that they actually go forward with getting kids in school.
We're going to have an argument today. That's great.
We can have an argument.
Yeah, I think the whole ADA model is ridiculous. I think that it's, and I don't say incentivize, I say punish. So you used the word incentivize is used throughout the report. I look at it as punishment. I think that it's and again, this is why these reports really kind of upset me at times, because they don't know. It seems to me they're looking at it from a vantage point from here that's so far removed from what happens on a day-to-day basis in classrooms, in attendance offices, with clerks, with CWAs, with assistant principals, and ultimately, some of that information is released on the dashboard in a very global aspect. I don't feel that it does justice to what we do on a daily basis. So everyone can say incentivize. I say it's a punishment. It's a penalty that districts have to do. And again, the report to me is so far removed. I think they try to make it objective and black and white without taking a look at what are some of the variables that exist within some of these communities. And so I think it's doing a disservice. And ultimately the blanket recommendation is, well, it's actually twofold. The recommendation is so the LAO doesn't recommend that we move to an enrollment count. that we should stick with an ADA model. However, they do give some suggestions to supplement if we're going to continue using the ADA model.
Well, and I think that's the question, right? If our system is completely outdated, and just so we're clear, I'm on the fence. I don't know either which way. Either which way. No, I really don't, because ultimately I see positives and I see negatives with both. I mean, and that's my honest opinion. I think that both of the proposals there are issues with both of the proposals. And I think that there's something else. I actually put out on Instagram today a poll for administrators to answer. What do you think that funding should be based on? ADA, enrollment, or something else? And so far, we actually have just a combination. I think we need to rethink the whole system.
There is no LEA staff member. There shouldn't be. We should do polls on the street on campuses, but there should be no LEA staff member who should disagree with an enrollment-based funding model versus an ADA. And so we can go through some of this report. It's a lengthy report. Well, I consider it a lengthy report.
Yeah,
it's 35 pages with a number of, they were charged with taking a look at what we currently have, the ADA model, looking at the history of attendance-based funding throughout the state, and taking a look at what other states do. So it was in that manner, it was fairly comprehensive. I think it's short-sighted. I question everything. I just had a conversation with someone the other day where we should question everything that people present to us. I feel like there's people cannot be objective.
Yeah.
As much as we say we're going to be objective, we're going to be objective, we're going to be objective, emotions play into it, subjectivity plays into it, an opinion plays into it on what we're looking at. So this is supposed to be an objective report. And it reads like an objective report. However, I don't think, again, it takes into account the variables that we have in certain communities. And what really I think is kind of upsetting to me is that ultimately lower SES communities are suffering for the ADA model, and they acknowledge that. And I think they try to downplay that, but they acknowledge the fact that lower SES communities have lower attendance rates and higher absenteeism.
And when you're talking about the variables, you're talking about those unduplicated pupil percentage populations, correct? So the UPPs, the students, the foster youth, the homeless, the migrant, the EL students. So that's in the low socioeconomic. So you're talking about those variables.
There's a lot more variables than that.
Special ed obviously is not a part of that considered in there, but those unique populations that the underserved communities you feel are.
Well, but there's also the other unspoken part of this is the SES of a community. And I, again, I have these conversations because I've come from probably one of the poorest communities in Southern California growing up, and it's missing the generational understanding and value or lack of value of education. There's greater things here at work, and I can get on my soapbox and say it's missing big components that we really don't talk about. And we're talking about portions of our community or some cities in Southern California where generationally, I can't say that word, generationally, there has been a lower value on education. And, we're talking, and again, communities I'm aware of because I grew up in, that most people don't understand what that's like, where there's a lack of value in education. And so to say, well, now you got to change, you got to program people to think that education is important and therefore attendance is important. All of this report is missing that. And it's a little upsetting, I guess. As you can see, I'm getting a little worked up about it because it ultimately is making districts that service these communities work harder than other districts. And they use this nonsensical argument of, well, but they get S&C because they're underserviced populations. Yeah. That to me is really an offensive argument. That you have high absenteeism because of unduplicated pupil counts. Again, like you mentioned, EL and foster youth and the free and reduced meal. That's going to offset the fact that you need to start attendance campaigns now to get kids to school. That's quite frankly offensive to someone like me, because I came from I've come from that environment. And to say that you're supposed to get all this additional monies to service this population, but now that all of those monies have to go to attendance campaigns, to me is preposterous. That's not what the S&C is supposed to do. S&C is supposed to provide supplemental and concentration monies to service those kids. Now, to say that I got to take that money, and they're saying that's the equalizer. What they're saying is that's the equalizer for attendance. To me, that's an inappropriate analysis.
So if we were to, let's say, not have these incentive type things, do you feel that our schools, or some schools that are lower socioeconomic status, do you feel that those staff members would be working hard to engage families and getting kids at school and getting kids in seats? Well, do you feel that would still be happening? Well,
we talk about how oversight from CDE and local county offices of education, they look at their identifying schools for issues, right? Mm-hmm. We've differentiated assistance, special ed has all sorts of other accountability mechanisms. So why not work with school districts that are having issues with attendance and support them outside of funding?
Yeah.
So to say like, oh, they get extra money, but they're going to use that money to target attendance campaigns, to me seems like, well, it's already earmarked for it.
Yeah.
And so we're supposed to use these monies to support school families and school districts, but you're already earmarking it for attendance. To me, is a cop-out. It's a little bit of a cheat, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, it's one of those things where even in special ed, when we deal with the state and they come to us and they say, well, your percentage is this. Our goal is to target that, and our goal is to improve that, because that is an area that they have recognized to us as a weakness, or some area that we need to clean up. There is this lack of awareness, I think, for some sites or some administrators, school site staff, that maybe they're not looking at it as, I want to engage my families in this conversation. I want to get my kids to school because learning is important. I want to do this, but more, I have to do it because I'm being told to. So if you have a report like that, don't you think that also might, I don't know, reverse it to a negative thing where they're doing it because they have to clean it up, not because they're really being proactive about engaging families and students in this importance of attendance conversation?
Let me ask you a question. This is where kind of self-monitoring comes into play. And I'm big on self-monitoring. Yeah. Like, we need to do right by our families.
Yes.
We need to do right by our teachers. We need to do right by our students. Let me ask you a question. We have, we've been seeing, again, pre-COVID, we've been seeing school avoidance due to anxiety and depression. Have you ever been in a meeting? Or let me take a step back, because pupil services functions a little bit differently than we do. We've seen a lot of our students that we work with are school avoidance because of anxiety and depression. Mm-hmm. Have you ever said, we're losing ADA because those kids are going to school?
No.
When I have those conversations, we need to get that kid back to school somehow. Minimum day, 1 period a day, half a day, 3/4 of a day. At no point in my mind, and look at a blended model. Let's do home teaching, temporary home teaching, and 1 period a day. Let's look at independent studies and be creative on trying to build tolerance for students to attend school. Mm-hmm. At no point in my mind does it enter, oh, I need to do this because I need to generate ADA for my district. I look at it as, if we don't intervene with this kid now, we're not only going to lose this kid, society is going to lose this kid.
Yeah.
And so the whole notion of incentivize me to recoup ADA to me is nonsensical. I think attendance offices and pupil services might have a little bit different things to say because it does generate monies for us. But I don't think I've ever said, if I've ever had a meeting saying we need to get this kid back in school because we're losing ADA.
Yeah. So, however, I have, and I will not name the district, I have sat in my kids' things where in back to school night, there is a massive presentation that is being put out there, and they are telling us, if you show your face for this 1 period, this is how much we get.
Yeah.
So I do have school sites and experience as a parent of them letting us know that, show up for at least 1 period, show up for 2 periods, show up for whatever, and we get this amount. And if you don't, then we lose this amount. They actually have, because their campaigns are through back to school night. They're over the intercom regularly during open house. They've got flyers up and presentations for parents. There's videos we have to watch on the importance of attendance. At no point, I feel, are those campaigns focused on, we want our children to be good individuals, to learn, to grow their brains, to, have a sense of community and connection with peers. It's all about. So while you and we're going to change the world and may not be having those conversations, there are a lot of schools that is how they approach it based off of money.
No, you bring up a good point, because we're both parents and we both had kids in the educational system. You still have kids in the educational system. At any point in time, have you thought to yourself, should I send my kid to school tomorrow? Because if I don't, the school's going to lose money.
No.
Okay, so that's the flip side of it. The flip side of it is parents don't make that connection of, if I don't send my kid to school, that school's going to lose money.
Yeah.
It's not even an afterthought. It's a non-thought,
Absolutely.
right? It doesn't.
Absolutely.
I never say, hey, I better not keep my kid home because the school's going to lose money. So, but look at what this does, the article, the report talks about it a little bit. Schools make projections.
Yes.
Schools have to staff based on projections. And when it gets to the middle school and the high school level, it's even more complicated because you're staffing and there's subject matter. It's not like elementary school where the kid is either in one class all day long, or they might do like language arts and social studies or math and science, and they might do some team teaching. Where I look at the high school level, you can't say straight FTE at the high school level, because if you lose a teacher, you're not losing a teacher who can teach any subject. Yeah. You're losing one teacher that teaches math, or one teacher that teaches science or language arts, whatever you have. So you still have to prepare for that kid. Yeah. And you still have to hire staff and enter in a contract with that staff based on those projections. You shouldn't be you can't be penalized by now some of those kids are not showing up to school, because, and I do applaud some states, because I did read that some funding is based on resources. Yep. And so they fund based on like, how much money does this school need to operate based on staffing? Yeah. I do appreciate that model more. I think this is looking at it almost purely at a financial aspect, because I think it does say, if we went from ADA to enrollment, it's going to be a $6 billion increase to the state. Yeah. Well, gee, okay. Well, that's not my problem. Yeah. That's the tax, which I am a taxpayer of the state. Yeah. So it is kind of my problem as a taxpayer, but because it's going to cost X amount of money to move from this funding model that's going to prepare schools to receive students, seems to be a better, just black and white looking at it. I need to prepare for kids that come to school. Yeah. This is what I'm expecting. This is how many teachers I'm going to expect to need to service these students. Yeah. To dangle a carrot saying, well, if those kids, and it's not even a carrot, because it's not really an incentive. You're saying incentivize. It's not. You have to do this to get the kids in the door now. Yeah. And so they're saying they're putting school districts in a frenzy to try to get kids into school. When you're talking about some areas that don't value education, some areas that don't think that, hey, my kid isn't going to school today, so the school's missing out on X amount of dollars. You're talking about sometimes kids have chronic illnesses. You're talking about all these factors that play into it, all these variables, as I mentioned. And somehow, the schools now, they're going to have to use S&C funds to address attendance campaigns. Yeah. To me, getting more worked up. Yeah. It's nonsensical. It's nonsensical.
Well, and so when we look at it, what was it? 45 states do not do ADA. 45 states base their funding on enrollment.
A combination. But
it's not based off of ADA, right? 45.
No, I don't think I saw that. I got the note somewhere around here. It's it's limited. There's mixtures of it. It's 35 states, including the District of Columbia, use student-based funding. 9 use resource-based funding, which I think is a good idea. 45 states use enrollment. 5 states use attendance. We're one of the 5 states. Yeah. You're right.
So it's 45 that are using this other model that is combining some of these things that you're talking about: the resource, the hybrid, the student hybrid, student-based funding, right? And so, I think it's interesting that there are the 5, and do you have the 5 that are still in the olden days?
I got California, Kentucky, Missouri, Texas, and I'm missing one.
So you've got basically 2 of the biggest states, California and Texas, right?
Yeah.
in terms of student population.
Yeah.
I mean, old school. I don't know. The other thing that I would say is like, we have to look at how California is uniquely different, right? Our state, I mean, they often say our state could be divided into 3 different states, right? With the politics, with the the populations that we serve, the English learners that we serve. We're very unique in the fact that we are so massive, right? Do you think some of that plays into it, where it's just, we could be that 3 states would maybe work differently, whereas like our county is very much not benefiting from this ADA model, but maybe some other areas in the San Francisco Bay Area, for instance, might be benefiting from this?
Well, I think this does do is it punishes smaller districts more than larger districts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So LAUSD might lose, and again, we're probably talking about millions of dollars they're losing on ADA over the course of a school year. But we're talking about the resource; they have much more resources than a smaller district. So I really think this does penalize smaller districts that can't, because every kid now is a bigger percentage of your funding, whereas in LAUSD it's proportional, it's relational. A smaller, if a kid misses a school in LAUSD, it's less of an impact than if a kid misses school in a smaller district. So ultimately, I think it does penalize smaller districts. And so I don't know. I want to know the credentials of the people doing these reports because but think about it.
Yeah.
Whatever their recommendations are, weigh heavy on the people that are making decisions.
Okay, but here's a question. Do you feel, because as I was reading this report, I felt like there was a lot of positivity around ADA. It did talk about a little bit of the negatives. It almost felt to me like it was already decided from the very start of the article of kind of what their recommendation was going to be. Did you feel that they went into depth of what the enrollment model might look like and be successful in the state of California? Because I felt like that component was missing.
I think the biggest thing they were saying was that schools are incentivized under the ADA model. So going through an enrollment model that districts wouldn't have attendance campaigns anymore, which I think really is a negative toward districts, right? So if you don't care about funding through attendance and we're going to guarantee you money through an enrollment, now you're no longer going to do the legwork to get kids to school.
Yeah.
And that's offensive to me. And I just mentioned that never once have I thought like I need to get a kid back in school.
But that's you.
Okay, but again, we go back to self-monitoring. We go back to, as leaders, what are we trying to do with promoting, attendance in our district and community? It kind of goes back to everything we've been talking about since we started the podcast. We want to build community where kids feel like they belong, kids feel safe, parents feel like they belong. And so once we start building that culture and building that culture with our leaders, then we're going to try to get kids back in school because kids need to be back in school.
Yeah.
One of the things they talked about was attendance and achievement, right? There's a direct correlation between students attending school and their outcomes.
Yes.
We know this already. So it seems somewhat preposterous to think that if we start getting incentive-based funding, that we're going to stop outreach to students to get them to go to school. That's offensive to me.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I also think that there are a number of leaders that maybe are not as they're focused on outcomes, right? And I sit there and I just think about the work that I regularly do. And, there are times where people want to put in the effort and there's times when they want to do the role. And there are times where there has to be a little bit of motivation or a little bit of checks and balances on that. By having the report, I like your idea of having, a metric that our districts have to meet, but not, we give you money because you've met this, but you just have to meet it. Otherwise, you're having some sort of monitoring support from the county. So I like that idea because I think that if you just get rid of all of that, then there is nothing for districts to have to measure up to. And then that's when I think it goes out the door because that suddenly becomes no longer a concern of that school site or that district.
So, and attendance, which is what we're talking about. We're never going to get 100% attendance.
No.
So it's already setting up under realistic expectation, right? You get your maximum amount of funding, ADA, if you have 100% attendance, which no one has.
Yeah.
95%. So, I would like to see a realistic benchmark because I think in education, we really do have unrealistic benchmarks. We really say I don't know who creates these these ideals, like attendance needs to be 95%, attendance needs to be 90%. I don't know what attendance should be, but it's never going to be 100%.
Yeah.
It's never going to be 98%.
Yeah.
If you take a look at average, right, and we take a look at maybe 70 to 80%, maybe 80%, 85%.
Yeah.
But, they're saying we have 90%. I don't have the stat in front of me. If they're saying our 90 to 93% is average, that seems pretty darn high.
Yeah.
I want to go back to LAO and look at their attendance rates for their staff members. I want
to see if it's up to 90%.
We should take. I mean, we're human, right?
Yeah.
We take illness days. We take mental health days. I mean, everybody, humans, right? Whether we're employees or whether we're children. So we have mental health days. We have physical health days. We have ditch days.
Yep.
Or I just don't want to go to school.
Yeah.
Parents say, hey, why don't we go to the park and have a father-son day? And I'm not going to go to school.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's part of human nature. And to punish school districts and then school districts at times have to get aversive with parents and go to SARB and DARB and punish parents. And I've been in some of those meetings where it's very aversive.
They're on trial.
It's not, how can we help you to get your kid to school? Like, what supports can we give? It's like, you need to get your kid to school. But the hidden message is, you need to get your kid to school because we're losing money.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't think parents are going to be very responsive to that. So when they say outreach, they mean DARB.
Yeah.
They mean SARCH.
Yeah.
And now, they've removed the judicial penalty of having to fine parents for the kids not coming to school. It's an aversive system. So you want to incentivize, and that is not an appropriate term. You want to incentivize districts, and to do so, they're going to be aversive to parents and really take away from that relationship of community building. I don't like it.
Yeah,
I don't like it.
Well, and then they have the drill and kill calls, where it's the automatic calls that go to the house constantly that say, your child has not shown up. Your child has not shown up. And so I get a lot of frustrated parents that are. Why does the school keep calling me? My kid had a doctor's appointment. And then, a couple of years ago, they got rid of the excused absences, right? So parents can't even say, hey, this is why I needed to take out my kid. I remember, back right after COVID, when my kid went back, I remember having a mental health day for the kids. And I called them and just said, my kid needs a mental health day. And it was marked as an absence. It didn't matter that I had called. It didn't matter that I had a reason. We were penalized, and it went on his record that he had an absence because of that. And so, you just have a lot of, like you're saying, aversive ways in which we approach it to get kind of that, need met, so that then we get that incentivized funding for the kid.
So you're going to say ADA is the way to go.
I'm not going to say that.
That's what you just said.
No, I don't think it's the way to go. I don't think it's the way to go. I think there needs to be a combination. I'd like to look into the states that you listed with their combination a little further. It'd be interesting if they did a study, if all of those states, if we did a deeper dive into some of those that are the hybrid or the student-centered model or the resource model, just to see what would that look like for the state of California, because I think this is not the answer. And I think just pure enrollment is not the answer either.
The way we do things, and as much as we have on our plates to try to educate kids and build community, we shouldn't have to jump through hoops. In order to get additional monies. And we shouldn't say, well, we realize you guys have attendance issues in some of the communities you serve with lower ESDS or high homeless or foster youth or EL, but you can always use your S&C for that. I don't like that idea. And I think it's inappropriate. And I think that they need to take another look at this to figure out how we're going to support our families, how we're going to support our students, how we're going to support our LEAs trying to provide appropriate education to students. We have enough to worry about. We shouldn't be worried about, hey, if I don't get enough ADA, we're not going to be fiscally solvent. And then now we got to cut stuff. So it shouldn't be. It places school districts in an unfair position where they're worried about money instead of worrying about students. And I think once we start worried about money and not about students, I think we're missing the point of why we're all here.
No, I think we should invite an LAO person onto the podcast to have a conversation with them.
Not going to be a good podcast.
No, you don't think so? I think that would be fun.
I think we should get
entertaining
someone.
a little bit.
I think I'm going to be aversive.
No.
I'm going to be aversive to some of the questions that I have because this report, and I don't know, I should have looked at how many authors were in this report, but this report is going to make recommendations that will change, that can possibly change the way we do business and put us in fear mode. And whenever staff gets in fear mode, the outcome of that can never be good. It's not the point of us being here.
And ultimately what we are reading is it has to go to voter approval, right? So this would be something that is going to go through the state process of getting votes on whether or not to move in this direction, correct?
I'm voting. I'm going to start campaigning.
Yeah?
Yeah, enrollment.
Just bring
enrollment. So we're enrollment versus ADA propaganda that I'm going to start distributing.
Okay. I want to see it.
All right. I am a worked up Leonard Martinez. This has been Mosaic Days.
You're actually very calm. I'm impressed. And I'm Allison Smith.
Thank you for joining us.
Have a good weekend.